Welcome back. Elon Musk's DOGE seemingly leaving no federal agency stone unturned, including now the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, two programs that consume a huge part of federal and state budgets. The Trump administration also terminating thousands of employees across HHS, including at the CDC and the FDA. So what do these cuts mean for both patients and the healthcare industry more broadly? Let's ask Mike Desjardins. He's CEO of healthcare payments player Anomaly. It's great to see you here.
Thank you for having me.
Can I call you an AI player in the
Sure.
space? Okay.
Absolutely.
Just to kind of give people a sense of the technological aspect to this. So when you're sitting here and looking at what Musk is doing, you're thinking what about these efforts?
Maybe not necessarily looking in the most advantageous places. So
Really?
I think we're talking about, cuts to personnel, which they've got a remit to do. And HHS is an enormous agency, almost 80,000 employees. And I think so far the cuts have looked to affect maybe 5,200 employees. But the money is really in the payments. And you'd mentioned in the lead-in, looking at CMS broadly, Medicare, Medicaid, it's almost $2 trillion in spend annually. I think 1.7 earmarked for the 2025 fiscal year. And the bulk of what you can do there is actually really look at where the money is going.
Right.
And anything you want to do on the regulation side, that's largely set by Congress. And your previous guest talked a lot about Medicaid, which we can talk about. But really, it comes down to where's the money going? Should it have gone out? And should it continue to go out?
Because you guys do a lot to try to cut down on the waste and the fraud. Is that right?
That's
so,
right.
And obviously, do you work with any government agencies, or is it all private sector?
We do not. All private sector.
So even though you're based in Washington, so you kind of have that proximity, should they take a firm like yours then and say, okay, go wild on sort of the government payments aspect of this?
I think technology can solve a big chunk of what's out there to be solved, with this particular problem. So I think in 2023, the Government Accountability Office looked at about $100 billion in kind of misspent federal money. So that's fraud, waste, abuse, improper payments across Medicare and Medicaid. $100 billion.
That's a lot of money.
And most folks say that's probably a drop in the bucket. I think the real kind of opportunity is people don't even know how big the problem is because it's so complicated to unwind the billing. So there's the chunk of payments that represent fraud, waste, and abuse that technology can absolutely help with. Then there's the bigger chunk of funds that's spent within, for example, Medicare. So I think the Trump administration, in their previous iteration, 2016, on expanded Medicare Advantage, they're likely to do the same now. We're already at 52% of seniors kind of getting a Medicare plan through Medicare Advantage. And there's no real good way to track moving forward. Is the money that's being earmarked and spent on Medicare Advantage actually being spent on care? Or is it being denied? Or is something else happening with it? And, auditing
I wouldn't have thought that was such an area to focus on. I would have thought Medicare Advantage was sort of quiet and ho-hum and, not the area to focus on.
No, I mean, Medicare Advantage was designed to inject some value-based incentives in payment to lower cost. But if you look at the history of Medicare Advantage, it's expanded. Folks have focused on growth. But costs have actually gone up. As a government, we're actually spending more on Medicare through Medicare Advantage. And there's lots of reasons why, but, at least in the ethos of solving problems that can be solved, getting around where the money's actually going and figuring out whether it's being well spent, that's a job for technology, and that's where people can help.
So in the final moments, give me an action plan, ChatGPT. If I had, how would you then, if Elon Musk literally called you up or one of his employees and said, okay, so what should we do? What does that look like?
Well, first, I would be shell-shocked. So once I got past that, I'd say really two things. I'd say, hey, let's look backwards on what Medicare payment has really looked like, and is there an appreciable fraud, waste, and abuse signal that we can pull out? So one, what shouldn't have gone out the door, and how do we prevent that moving forward? And then number two is to put a better, more real-time audit function on Medicare payments that are going out, so just like a normal company would outside the government, hey, should I have paid this? Should I not have paid this? Is everybody following the rules with regards to payment? Because Medicare Advantage should follow Medicare established payment rules, and it doesn't always. And that is, maybe in previous iterations of technology, a difficult problem to solve, but that's a solvable problem today.